This is live from New Delhi. You're watching DD India's News Hour. I'm Sakal Bhatt, and DD India is India's voice to the world. Coming up in the next hour, India's President Droupadi Murmu launches the country's first homegrown gene therapy for the treatment of cancer. US Secretary of State Antony Blinken says Ukraine will eventually join NATO as the bloc marks its 75th anniversary with a show of unity and solidarity. Kremlin declares Russia and NATO are now in direct confrontation as relations between Russia and NATO slide to their lowest level. Israel signals its military's investigation of an airstrike that killed 7 aid workers in the Gaza Strip could take weeks. India's President Droupadi Murmu launched the country's first homegrown gene therapy for the treatment of cancer. The formal launch of the indigenously developed chimeric antigen receptor or CAR-T cell therapy or CAR-T cell therapy to treat cancer patients. And with that, India has not only joined the key elite group of countries having this therapy, but it has also placed India on the global map of cell and gene therapy. Yogesh Sheetal from DD India gets us more.
The President of India, Droupadi Murmu, launched the anti-cancer CAR-T cell therapy and dedicated it to the nation. On this occasion, the President congratulated the Tata Memorial Centre, popularly known as Tata Cancer Hospital, IIT Bombay and ImmunoAct, and defined it as the best example of Make in India and Atmanirbhar Bharat, that is self-reliant India.
The launch ceremony of India's first gene therapy is a major breakthrough in our battle against cancer. This line of treatment named CAR-T cell therapy is accessible and affordable. It provides a new hope for the whole of humankind. What is new about the therapy being launched today, as I understand it, is that it costs 90% less than what is available elsewhere.
CAR-T cell therapy has been jointly developed by the IIT and Tata Memorial Centre indigenously. This therapy is used in Western countries and its affordability in India has always been a concern. And that's the reason both premier institutions started working to develop it in India, and finally their determination paid off.
Many other cancers development is taking place. It's a new technology, it's a new therapy, so it will take time for proof. But it may be applicable in other types of blood cancers and solid tumors also. And hopefully we will be seeing that happening in the next 2 to 3 years. More such clinical trials will be coming.
The best thing with this therapy is the possibility of complete cure of cancer. Marking this as a proud moment for the country, he said that this is our first step towards developed India.
मेक इन इंडिया एफर्ट से हमारे देश में ये थेरेपी पहली बार 25 से 30 लाख रुपए के रेंज में अवेलेबल होगी, तो एक बहुत अच्छी बात है और बहुत ही आई थिंक काफी प्राउड मोमेंट है अपने लिए और अपने देश के लिए.
The CAR-T cell therapy has given a new ray of hope to the cancer patients. At the same time, it will also inspire new startups in the field of healthcare.
The new CAR-T cell technology will not only be accessible and affordable for the people of India, especially because of indigenous factor, but it will also explore a world of opportunities for new startups in medical sector. With my camera person Kapil, this is Yogesh Kumar Sheetal reporting from Mumbai for DD India.
In other news, India's spokesperson for the Ministry of External Affairs, Randir Jaiswal, in his weekly briefing on Thursday, spoke on various issues. Let's take a look now at these issues on 2 Indian nationals who were reportedly missing in Taiwan earthquake. MEA's spokesperson has said that the contact has been established.
हम लोग के जानकारी के हिसाब से 2 लोग पहले जो भूकंप आया ताइवान में, वहां पर 2 लोग से हम लोग संपर्क नहीं कर पा रहे थे. लेकिन अब हम लोगों ने वहाँ पर उनसे हम संपर्क कर लिया है और वो लोग सुरक्षित हैं.
On the ongoing China claims on Indian state of Arunachal Pradesh, Mr. Jaiswal reiterated that Arunachal has always been an Indian territory and it will continue to remain so.
We have made a couple of statements in the last month, last few weeks. Each time we have reiterated our position. So I would refer you to look at our statements that we've done. In fact, a couple of them, several of them that we've done. Then that clarifies our position. That just by naming something, you don't change the reality. The reality is what it is. Arunachal Pradesh is an integral part, inalienable part of India, and it will remain so.
Also speaking about the Indian workers going to Israel under 2G2 agreement, MEA spokesperson Jaiswal stressed on the safety of workers and urged Israeli authorities to do their best.
The first batch of people under the G2G agreement have gone to Israel. For us, their safety, of course, is very important. We have urged the Israeli authorities to do their best to take care of their safety and their well-being. It is of prime importance.
On India-Bangladesh ties, MEA spokesperson Randir Jaiswal also said that two countries share a very strong and comprehensive partnership across various sectors.
India-Bangladesh relations are very strong and deep. We have a very comprehensive partnership that spans across sectors, from economy to trade to investment to development cooperation, connectivity, people to people. You name any human endeavor, it is part and parcel of almost part and parcel of India-Bangladesh relations. That is how vibrant this partnership is, and it will continue to be so.
The NATO foreign ministers are celebrating the 75th anniversary of their alliance. The North Atlantic Treaty was signed on 4th of April 1949, which established the transatlantic political and military alliance. Now remember, NATO began with 12 members from North America and Europe, and then 75 years on, it has 32 members, and it has retaken a central role in the world affairs. And DD India's Ishan Garg joins us from Brussels, which has hosted the NATO foreign ministers meet, and today being the concluding day there. Ishan, overall, we spoke with you yesterday also. So Russia-Ukraine topped the discussions, the conversations about the weaponry support to Ukraine, and much more was on the top of the agenda. But in terms of the outcome and deliverables, what information or what is the inside track you can share with us?
Well, there aren't going to be any deliverables from this particular meeting because the Foreign Affairs meeting was essentially intended to set up the stage for the NATO Leaders Summit, which is going to happen in Washington in July. But what's happened here is that they've kick-started a conversation. They've started a conversation particularly about that $108 billion fund, which is intended to provide Ukraine a long-term view over the kind of pot of money it's going to have access to, so that it can plan its offensive in a much better way. There's also been a conversation about how can various NATO countries come together and formalize their contribution going towards Ukraine in a more structured way and not depend on ad hoc basis. That's what Jens Stoltenberg, the NATO Secretary General, has said. Apart from that, we've also heard from the Ukrainian Foreign Minister on Thursday, who said that he's happy about these commitments about the long term, but in the short term, what Ukraine requires is the Patriot air missile defense system, because he said that 94 ballistic missiles have been fired by Russia at Ukraine just this month. So those missile defense systems are the need of the hour. The overall message from NATO has been that it stands committed to Ukraine, but we did not receive a lot of details about how this particular package is going to essentially work. Those details are still awaited, as the Secretary General here says that they will be hashed out in the next few weeks.
So overall, was this more on for the optics in the sense that when your two-day foreign ministers NATO meet is underway, you see what's happening on the war front where Russia continues the ante or the offensive on Ukraine. So there is this overall support for Ukraine, just the conversation, or because there were conversations about whether Ukraine is going to be joining the bloc formally or not.
Well, there's been a message both from the NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg and also from the US Secretary of State Antony Blinken that Ukraine is going to join NATO. And Jens Stoltenberg has said that it's not a question of if, it's a question of when. But there is not going to be any immediate movement on that front right now, because they're obviously discussing how Ukraine can be brought closer to NATO in the next weeks and months. But we're not expecting any decisions on that front anytime soon.
Okay, we'll leave it there. Thank you very much, Ishan Garg, for joining us from Brussels and bringing us up to speed with the discussions that took place at the NATO foreign ministers meeting in Brussels, and today being the concluding day. And still to come on DD India News Hour, coming up next. Campaigning gains momentum ahead of the Lok Sabha polls in India. And the toll of those injured in Taiwan earthquake has crossed 1,000. Rescue operations are underway in quake-struck areas. Also, US Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen arrives in China for excess production talks.
Voice of a rising aspirational world. Stories of challenges, struggles and accomplishment. A world battling conflict, hunger and poverty. Embracing growth, development, science and technology. A voice of progress, a voice of unity. Watch Voice of the Global South with me, Akshay Dongre, only on DD India.
Shifting focus to Russia-Ukraine, you're watching DD India News Hour. I'm Sakal. But Russia's attack on Ukraine's energy infrastructure continues unabated with drones. And this offensive continues to be there amid the NATO foreign ministers meeting, which is underway in Brussels. In fact, today being the concluding day. Dheeraj Das of DD India gets us more.
As Russia-Ukraine conflict entered its 770th day on Thursday, Russia continues to attack Ukraine and its energy infrastructure with drones. A drone attack struck residential buildings in the Ukrainian city of Kharkiv and an energy facility in the surrounding region, killing 4 people and severing power for 350,000. Kharkiv, which lies some 30 kilometers from the Russian border, has been bombed heavily during the 25-month conflict and been one of the worst afflicted as Russia has renewed its missile and drone attacks on the energy system. In Brussels, NATO foreign ministers held a meeting with Ukraine's Foreign Minister Dmytro Kuleba on Thursday after agreeing to start planning for a greater role in coordinating military aid to Kiev to help it battle Russia. US Secretary of State Antony Blinken said that Ukraine will eventually join NATO with the alliance anniversary summit, helping to build a bridge to that membership.
Ukraine will become a member of NATO. Our purpose at the summit is to help build a bridge to that membership and to create a clear pathway for Ukraine moving forward. We've done a lot of work on that over the last couple of days here in Brussels, a lot more work to be done between now and the summit, but we will see, I think, in the summit, very strong support for Ukraine going forward in its relationship with NATO.
Standing next to Secretary of State Antony Blinken, Ukraine's Foreign Minister Dmytro Kuleba said that he had briefed the NATO ministers on the status of the conflict.
I didn't want to spoil the birthday party for NATO, but I felt compelled to deliver a very sobering message on behalf of Ukrainians about the state of Russian air attacks on my country, destroying our energy system, our economy, killing civilians. And I urged allies today to provide Ukraine with new additional air defense systems.
Meanwhile, in another development, Russia's FSB security service has detained 3 more people suspected of involvement in last month's mass shooting at a concert hall near Moscow. Russian news agencies quoted the FSB as saying on Thursday. A Russian citizen and 2 foreign citizens, all of them originally from Central Asia, were detained in Moscow. This comes even as President Vladimir Putin stresses that Russia cannot be a target for Islamic fundamentalists.
Russia cannot be the target of terrorist attacks by Islamic fundamentalists. We are a country that demonstrates a unique example of interfaith harmony and unity of inter-religious and inter-ethnic unity. And in the foreign affairs, it behaves in such a way that is unlikely to be a target for attacks by Islamic fundamentalists.
As the Russia-Ukraine conflict drags on, Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov has said China proposed the most reasonable peace plan so far for resolving the Ukraine conflict. Beijing put forward a 12-point paper more than a year ago that set out general principles for ending the conflict but did not get into specifics. It received a lukewarm reception at the time in both Russia and Ukraine, while the United States said China was presenting itself as a peacemaker. Bureau Report, DD India.
And DD India's Dasha Chernashova has sent us this report from Moscow.
Well, certainly Moscow does perceive NATO as an aggressive alliance, and the Kremlin repeatedly confirms this, saying that the alliance is getting closer and closer to the Russian borders. It is enlarging. There have been several waves of the enlargement, and also the military infrastructure of the military of these alliance is getting closer to Russia, forcing Russia to respond. So from the Russian perspective, it is NATO that is posing a threat to Russia. From the perspective of NATO, it is a defensive alliance, and it is Russia that has proven once again that NATO is still relevant by supporting Ukraine at the moment. At the same time, Moscow maintains that NATO's involvement in Ukraine means that the relationship have not only slid to the direct confrontation, they have been deteriorated on purpose. The Deputy Foreign Minister Alexander Grushko early in the day was quoted as saying that Washington and Brussels have done their utmost to make sure that the relations are at the critical zero level. Having said that, we also understand that Moscow is not closing the door to any sort of communication or dialogue with the West or NATO, saying that obviously these negotiations could proceed only when NATO stops its rhetoric and does not perceive Russia as a direct threat. The Russian officials repeatedly point that this is the wording that NATO has in its doctrinal documents. So from the Russian perspective, obviously the relations are very tense, but Moscow is not shutting the door. It has been suggested by the Russian officials even before the conflict in Ukraine started in 2022 that there should be some sort of document signed between NATO and Russia. Moscow was coming up with the security proposals. Moscow insists that NATO was not willing to discuss that. So at the moment, obviously the relationship is very difficult. The relations are tense, and escalation is something that many analysts are expecting.
Ceasefire in the Israel-Hamas conflict seems bleak in the days to come as no party is ready to budge on its conditions. Now, Qatar's Prime Minister has cautioned that attack on the Gazan city of Rafah would lead to a continuous cycle of violence. And amid retaliation threats from Iran, IDF has cancelled home leave for all its combat troops. Meanwhile, world leaders are pressing for very swift Israeli investigation into the attack on World Central Kitchen Convoy. Here's a detailed report.
Talks on a ceasefire between Israel and Hamas appear to be making little progress, with the two sides showing few signs that they are ready to compromise on their demands. Neither Israel is ready to return displaced residents to their homes in Gaza, nor Hamas is willing to budge on its conditions to release Israeli captives held in the besieged territory. On the other hand, Qatar's Prime Minister Sheikh Mohammed bin Abdul Rahman Al Thani said on Wednesday that any invasion on the Gazan city of Rafah would lead to continuous cycle of violence. Meanwhile, world leaders continue to condemn Monday's attack on World Central Kitchen Convoy, in which 7 aid workers were killed. Israel said that the strike was a grave mistake and apologized for the incident. But World Central Kitchen founder Jose Andres is not ready to buy the argument.
This happened over more than 1.5, 1.8 kilometers. So this was not just a bad luck situation where, we dropped the bomb in the wrong place or no, this was over 1.5, 1.8 kilometers with a very defined humanitarian convoy that had signs in the top, in the roof, a very colorful logo that we are obviously very proud of, but that's very clear who we are and what we do.
White House spokesperson Karine Jean-Pierre said on Wednesday that President Biden was outraged and heartbroken at the death of 7 aid workers in Gaza. The State Department said that the United States want to see a swift Israeli investigation into the attack.
The Israelis have said to us, and they've said publicly, that they intend to conduct this investigation swiftly. We want to see it wrapped up as soon as possible and see them put in place any measures to prevent this from happening again in the future. And that's go to the second point that we think we need to see. Not just, and they don't have to wait for the outcome of this investigation to do it. They need to put in place better deconfliction and better coordination measures to protect humanitarian workers and to protect all the civilians on the ground.
Australia's Prime Minister Anthony Albanese said on Thursday that Israel's explanation for the deaths of 7 aid workers, including an Australian citizen, is not sufficient.
We need to have accountability for how it's occurred. And what isn't good enough is the statements that have been made, including that this is just a product of war. This is against humanitarian law.
Meanwhile, amid retaliation threats from Iran, IDF on Thursday cancelled home leave for all combat troops following a fresh assessment. Bureau Report, DD India.
Shifting focus to Taiwan earthquake update. We're in the aftermath of the deadly earthquake that caused massive destruction in Taiwan on Wednesday. More than 1,000 are now reportedly injured, with only 10 deaths reported. Firefighters also have said that their workers found a dead body in the rubble on a hiking trail near the entrance to a gorge on Thursday in Hualien, a day after the quake. The discovery of the body took the total death toll from the quake to 10. Rescue operations are underway to look out for people still trapped under the rubble. Helicopters are being used by the rescuers to lift stranded people, while some government personnel were deployed to help residents collect their valuables from destructed buildings. Meanwhile, Taiwan has condemned China as shameless after Beijing's deputy ambassador to the United Nations thanked the international community for the concern about the strong earthquake on island. China claims democratically governed Taiwan as its own territory and also claims the right to speak for it on the international stage, which obviously has angered Taipei. In other news, U.S. Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen has arrived in China's southern factory hub of Guangzhou on Thursday with a tough message to Chinese officials. In a series of meetings with top Chinese economic officials from Friday through Monday, Yellen will seek to convey her view that the excess production is unhealthy for China and that there is a growing drumbeat of concern about it in the U.S., Europe, Japan, Mexico and other major economies. China is unleashing a flood of electric vehicles, batteries, solar panels, semiconductors and other manufactured goods into global markets, the result of years of massive government subsidies and weak demand at home. Global prices for many goods are tanking, pressurizing producers in other countries. Let's take a look now at other stories making news around the world. The United States on Thursday imposed new Iran-related counter-terrorism sanctions against Ocean Link Maritime, DMCC and its vessels. Their claim is that the company is involved in shipping commodities on behalf of the Iranian military. An activated but faulty missile launcher on a Danish Navy vessel triggered a closure of airspace and shipping traffic in the Great Belt Strait on Thursday. Denmark's National Maritime Authority had earlier warned ships not to sail through the Great Belt Strait due to the risk of falling missile fragments. Venice's Mayor Luigi Brignaro on Thursday unveiled the details of the new fee for day trippers in a move to preserve the lagoon city. From April 25th, day tourists will be charged around $6, which will be implemented on 30 particularly busy days of the spring and summer to protect the city from mass tourism. Nils Matthias Sara, a Norwegian herder, has been spreading animal feed for hundreds of reindeer gathered in the Finnmark mountain plateau in Arctic Norway. Climate change has led to rain freezing the lichen that the reindeer usually eat, hence making them too dependent on herders for food. And still to come on DD India News Hour, coming up next. Well, in what could be a big breakthrough in the indigenous cancer treatments, India's first homegrown CAR T-cell therapy for cancer treatment launched by the President of India. Singapore is tapping innovative technologies with country's safety in mind.
We just don't bring you the news as it unfolds. We get to the heart of the matter.
We don't just present facts. We demystify complex social, political, and economic events.
We break stories that shape the world's present and future because you deserve the truth.
I am Tanvi Taneja from New Delhi.
I'm Ollie Barrett from London.
I'm Nick Harper from Washington, D.C.
Join us on DD India Global Monday to Friday at these times.
You're watching DD India News Hour. I'm Sakal Bhatt, and before we move on, a quick look at the headlines again. India's President Droupadi Murmu launches the country's first homegrown gene therapy for treatment of cancer. Kremlin declares Russia and NATO are now in direct confrontation as relations between Russia and NATO slide to their lowest level. Israel signals its military's investigation of an airstrike that killed 7 aid workers in the Gaza Strip could take weeks. Well, in what could be a big breakthrough in indigenous cancer treatments, India's first homegrown CAR T-cell therapy for cancer treatment. This therapy has been jointly developed by IIT and Tata Memorial. We are joined by Dr. Gaurav Narula from one of the India's prestigious cancer hospitals, Tata Memorial, also to talk about what does this mean for the country by and large, in cancer treatment, and in terms of making us understand. Dr. Narula, thank you so much for joining us on this broadcast. Just to break this further for viewers of DD India to understand what makes this a big breakthrough and give us more details about it.
Thank you very much. It's my pleasure to be here. So this therapy is actually different in the way that we use the body's own immune system to tackle cancer. And it involves some very complex technology because we take the immune cells from the patient, so it's very highly personalized and it can be used back only for that patient. And these are genetically modified outside the body in a lab or in a manufacturing facility to attack or recognize and attack a particular kind of cancer, in this case, B-cell leukemias and lymphomas. And then we give it back to the patient and it helps to clear the cancer. Now, this has been seen to be very effective in patients who actually had no lines of therapy left. Now, we must understand that B-cell leukemia and lymphoma are actually quite curable by currently available therapies like chemotherapy and transplant. But when these stop working in some of these patients, 20 to 30% patients, then they have no lines of therapy left. And in this situation, these therapies have shown remarkable responses. So that's why it's such a breakthrough.
And in terms of affordability also?
Oh, yes, indeed. So actually, these therapies are terribly expensive. When we started working, IIT Bombay and us, when we started working on this project around 2015 together, at that time, there was no available therapy in the world. They were all in early phase clinical trials. But even at that time, we understood that when it's developed, it's going to be terribly expensive and it'll never come to our country. So that's when we thought that, unless we develop it inside India and make it in India and understand the technology in India, only then will it be affordable. And that's what's actually happened. So now it's available now. My colleague and collaborator in Indian Institute of Technology formed a company called ImmunoAct, which has now got the marketing approval for it. And it's being available at 1/10 the cost of what it is in the West. So it's nearly 4.5 crores and upwards in the US. And many European countries don't have it because of the price. But over here, it's selling for between 30 to 40 lakhs from ImmunoAct. So that's a terrific achievement, which could only happen because it was developed here.
Terrific achievement, and that a layman would just want to understand that are we now looking at the possibility of the complete cure to cancer?
How I wish indeed that was possible. Isn't that everyone's dream, and surely for us too? But I think we are a long way away from that. This is a spectacular breakthrough technology with a lot of potential. But as of now, its proof lies in only a handful of cancers, mostly blood cancers. There are trials going around all over the world in difficult to treat cancers. Many of them are showing promising results. But when we say promising in medicine, we are talking about 8 to 10 years before it can be used in the clinic.
Okay.
Hopefully, because there's so much advancement happening, we might see breakthroughs in other areas in the coming years. We ourselves are working on it, and so are many others in the world. But now we are also in it.
And this putting India in the elite nations global map where gene therapy has been used or is being used.
Oh yes, indeed. So actually, in 2015, when we started out, there was just a handful of trials going on in the US. But by that time, the responses were so great, even in these early phase trials, the race began. By 2018-19, China had overtaken US in the number of clinical trials going on. And by the end of 2022, I think there were more than 3,000 to 4,000 trials going on around the world. But all these trials were focused in a handful of countries. So apart from the US and China and a few European countries, there was hardly anybody else who had any therapy close to approval. And so yes, so we are in an elite club now, and we have done it over here. We had some guidance from the National Cancer Institute in Bethesda, but it was in the terms of knowledge mentoring. We didn't get any research funding or any materials from them, so it's entirely made by ourselves. So yes, so we are in an elite club now.
You know that, yes, and that question on complete cure to cancer, but at least now there is this new ray of hope through gene therapy.
Yes, it has opened up a whole new avenue. So
Okay.
up till now, we have been treating cancer with chemotherapy, radiation and surgery, and these are still very effective and the recommended cures for most of these cancers. What this has opened up is an avenue. And hopefully in the coming decade, we will see many more cell and gene therapies coming up for some other blood cancers initially and some gene disorders. So they're already on the way. These trials are already happening, even in India as we speak. And more are planned on the corner. We ourselves are planning to launch some other clinical trials for cell therapy probably later this year. So it's opened up a whole new avenue. So there's a lot of promise. But word of caution, it may not work for everything.
Yeah.
We will find out when we try them out, and that will take time.
And what is the kind of timeline, doctor, we're looking at?
Normally in medicine, a timeline from discovery in the lab to translation to approved therapy in the clinic takes anywhere between 10 to 20 years. We were able to do this pretty fast because we started working in 2015 and ImmunoAct got approval by 2023. So in a short span of 8 to 9 years, this is actually quite unprecedented. But this kind of thing will not happen every time.
Right.
What we have now is we have the capacity and the platform. So we hope that the next ones will also come out faster. Yes.
Capacity, and there's also this conversation about this triggering new startups ecosystem, particularly in the healthcare.
Yes. So actually, this is something which is desperately needed. I think, our healthcare industry has worked mostly on a revenue model which depends upon footfall. Whereas if you see the healthcare industry in the West and developed countries works on innovation. The big money in healthcare comes from innovation. And unless you innovate, you will always be chasing smaller things. This is an example of innovation from academic centers. The therapy was developed in IIT Bombay in Dr. Rahul Pudwar's lab, and then after that, we worked together to bring it to the clinic. But these are academic institutions who did it, and then Dr. Rahul Pudwar opened this company, ImmunoAct startup, which has successfully taken it. This model should be replicated in different institutes and allow the next lot of ideas to make it rapidly to the clinic. We need an entire ecosystem of major academic centers and industry partnering to bring these therapies. These require investment, even though our therapy is cheaper, but it still requires a lot of funds. And those kind of funds are not easy to come by in India.
Okay.
So it requires industry, academic collaboration of a degree which we are only beginning to start seeing now in India. Hopefully, this will become a template.
Absolutely, and why not? At least the beginning has been made, and that too, it's a huge step. Of course, you and other scientists and doctors from both these prestigious institutes are part of the core team. So, as a doctor, what would be your message to those families, or perhaps those who are battling cancer? Would you like to give some message, and as a parting note?
So it is actually the lack of and loss of options when children especially reached this stage in the therapy when we were having to turn them back and go home, which is what drove me and my friends and colleagues to somehow get this therapy anyhow into India. And, we went ahead with a passion regardless kind of attitude. We were not going to stop till it was here. But still, the sad reality is that it's applicable only to one type of cancer, and we are hoping that we can bring it to all those patients where it might work as fast as possible. It takes time, but there's hope, and we are hoping that we can take this forward. It's one step at a time, one patient at a time.
Yes.
So we just hope to continue.
Once again, huge congratulations to you and your team from Tata and the other institute. Also, thank you very much at the same time for joining us on this broadcast and sharing these very critical details. Thank you, sir. Let's move on to some other stories. Well, speaking at a news conference, going back to the top story on the NATO Foreign Ministers Conference in Brussels, NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg has made it clear that NATO is not and will not be party to the conflict in Ukraine.
So NATO is not party to the conflict, and NATO will not be party to the conflict. But NATO is providing support to Ukraine to help them defend themselves. And we just have to remember again and again what this is. This is one country, Russia, attacking another, invading another country.
And now let's get you some of the latest news and updates on the world's largest democratic election in India. As the date for the first phase of Lok Sabha polls nears, political parties are intensifying their poll pitches in different states. Prime Minister Narendra Modi of India held a first election rally in Bihar, while Cooch Behar city in eastern Indian state of West Bengal saw heavy and hectic campaigning battle as well. On the other hand, the opposition bloc is going all out to boot the voters across the country. Meanwhile, the nomination filing for the second phase of elections, which will take place on 26th of April, concluded. Here's more.
With the polling for the first phase of Lok Sabha elections just days away, campaigning has gathered momentum, with leaders of all political parties reaching out to the electorate with promises raising the poll favour. Prime Minister Narendra Modi addressed his first election rally in Bihar. It was in Jamui. Addressing the rally, he warned the opposition and said that they will have to pay the price of their corrupt practices.
RJD कांग्रेस आपके हक के सारे पैसे भी लूट लेते और आपसे साइन भी करा लेते कि हाँ पैसा मिल गया है। आज देश के सारे भ्रष्टाचारी जो हमेशा एक दूसरे से लड़ते थे, एक दूसरे पर भ्रष्टाचार के आरोप लगाते थे, एक दूसरे को जेल में बंद करने की मांग कर रहे थे, अब वो सब मिलकर मोदी आया। भ्रष्टाचारी कान खोल करके सुन ले, ये मोदी नहीं आया, 140 करोड़ देशवासियों का भ्रष्टाचारियों के प्रति गुस्सा निकल करके आया है।
Later, PM Modi also held a public rally in the Coach Behar of North Indian state of West Bengal. During the rally, PM Modi slammed the state government for shielding the Sandesh Khali accused and said that only BJP can stop atrocities against women in West Bengal. He also held a road show where a large number of people gathered to show their support. The Coach Behar district witnessed a back-to-back Lok Sabha campaign battle. Before PM Modi, West Bengal's Chief Minister held a public rally. Assuring the people of Bengal, Mamata Banerjee said that only her party can be entrusted to take care of their interests. Meanwhile, country's biggest opposition, Congress Party, is going all out to woo the voters across the country. Congress leader Sachin Pilot, while addressing a public rally, accused BJP of exploiting farmers and the middle class.
इस देश में 10 साल से जो हालात पैदा हुए हैं वो आप सबके सामने हैं। किसान, मध्यम वर्ग, महिला, हर व्यक्ति को शोषित करने का काम इस सरकार ने किया है।
The Communist Party Marxist released its election manifesto for the Lok Sabha elections. On this occasion, Party General Secretary Sitaram Yechuri said, India is a secular, democratic republic which is facing existential threat today. In the eastern side, Jharkhand Mukti Morcha released the first list of its candidates for the Lok Sabha elections. JMM has made Nalin Soren its Lok Sabha candidate from Dumka, while Mathura Prasad Mahato has been fielded from Giridih Lok Sabha seat. BJP Election Manifesto Committee held its second meeting under the chairmanship of Defence Minister Rajnath Singh. In the meeting, many issues regarding the upcoming Lok Sabha elections were discussed. Several union ministers and senior BJP leaders brainstormed on important points for the manifesto. Thursday was the last day to file nominations for the second phase of Lok Sabha elections. In this phase, elections will be held in 88 parliamentary constituencies in 12 states, union territories. On April 5, nomination papers will be scrutinized in all states and union territories except Jammu and Kashmir. In Jammu and Kashmir, the scrutiny will be held on April 6. States, union territories where polling will take place in phase 2 are Assam, Bihar, Chhattisgarh, Jammu and Kashmir, Karnataka, Kerala, Maharashtra, Madhya Pradesh, Rajasthan, Tripura, Uttar Pradesh and West Bengal, apart from one part parliamentary constituency in Manipur. Several leaders on Thursday filed their nominations for second phase of elections, which will take place on 26th of April. BJP's candidate from Mathura constituency, Hema Malini, filed her nomination. India's Minister of State for Electronics and Information Technology also filed his nomination from Thiruvananthapuram constituency. From the opposition bloc, Congress candidate K.C. Venugopal from Alappuzha constituency filed his nomination. Former Rajasthan Chief Minister Ashok Gehlot's son Vaibhav Gehlot filed his nomination from Jalore constituency. Ahead of the first phase of polls, Congress suffered a major jolt after several Congress leaders including Gaurav Vallabh, former MP Shankar Pannu and former MLA J.P. Chandela joined BJP. Bureau Report, DD India.
Continuing with election-related news, now let's take a look at the election pitch or the kind of contest that is on cards in Rajasthan. Rajasthan is an Indian state located in the northwestern part of the country with the Thar Desert covering a significant portion of the state. Here's more about the state.
The mention of Rajasthan brings to memory rich culture, history and heritage that has stood the test of time. Rajasthan is synonymous with tourism. World-famous castles, forts and palaces built by the erstwhile royals are a main attraction for global tourists. Rajasthan is the largest state in India with an area of over 342,000 square kilometers. It is located in the northwestern part of the country with the Thar Desert covering a significant portion of the state. The state of Rajasthan was formed on March 30th, 1949 with Jaipur as its designated capital city. As India goes to polls this year, The political barometer of Rajasthan is rising, with parties eyeing the 25 seats of Lok Sabha, the lower house of the Indian Parliament. The 2024 general election in Rajasthan is being conducted in two phases, on April 19th and May 26th. Rajasthan's population is about 81.3 million, out of which a total of 52.6 million voters are registered in the state. The state has 27.4 million male voters, 25.3 million female voters, and about 600 voters from the third gender. The Bharatiya Janata Party, Indian National Congress, Rashtriya Lokatantrik Party, the Bahujan Samaj Party, and the Rashtriya Lok Dal are the prominent players in the state. Looking back at the 2019 general elections, the BJP not only swept the polls but also increased its vote share to 59.07%. Rajasthan saw BJP-led NDA scoring 24 out of the 25 seats, along with the Rashtriya Lokatantrik Party securing 1 seat, and no seat was won by the Indian National Congress. As the parliamentary election dates are now set for the political matches in Rajasthan, the BJP is aiming for a repeat of 2019 blockbuster, while the other parties have upped their ante to improve their scores in the desert state. Election Desk, DD India.
And now let's take a look at other stories making news. India conducted a successful flight test of the Agni Prime, a new generation ballistic missile from the Dr. APJ Abdul Kalam Island off the coast of Odisha on Wednesday. The test met all the trial objectives, validating its performance. The Chief of the Defence Staff, the Strategic Forces Command Chief, and officials from the Defence Research and Development Organisation of DRDO witnessed the test. India's Union Minister Anurag Thakur addressed a gathering at an interactive meet with IT professionals in Bangalore in the South Indian state of Karnataka. He was in the city to campaign for upcoming general elections. An Indian Air Force Apache helicopter carried out a precautionary landing during an operational training sortie in Ladakh on Wednesday. During the process of this landing, it sustained damage due to undulating terrain and high altitude, and both the pilots on board are safe and have been recovered to the nearest airbase. Lieutenant Governor of Delhi, Vinay Kumar Saxena, inspected a demo of the fire department robots at Fire Safety Management Academy in the national capital on Thursday. Some news coming in from Singapore, where Singapore seems to be tapping innovative technologies with the country's safety in mind. Singapore's science and technology arm, that is HTX, and French tech partner Civipol has organized a trade show involving 350 firms. HTX showcased its latest invention of a cyborg cockroach that can sense body heat and navigate tight spaces in search and rescue missions. The cockroach holds a backpack equipped with an infrared camera and heat sensors. These robots are aimed to replace manpower for certain dangerous operations. And still to come on DD India News Hour. Coming up next, we have some sports action for you. First up, soccer, where Liverpool is all set to face Sheffield United in Premier League clash.
India that invents. India that innovates. India that excites. India that invites. Land of possibility. Teeming with opportunities. Watch India Ideas each Thursday, 8 p.m. only on DD India.
You're watching DD India News Hour. I'm Sakal Bhatt, and now let's move on to some sports news. Women's Tennis Association has said that the season-ending WTA finals will be held in Saudi Arabia's capital Riyadh from 2024-2026, ending months of speculation and marking the Gulf country's latest foray into the sports. Riyadh will host the season finale, which features the top 8 singles players and doubles teams from November 2nd to 9 and replaces last year's host Cancun in Mexico. Talk that the event could be shifted to Saudi Arabia had intensified after the men's ATP Tour said last August its next general finals would be held in Jeddah from 2023 to 2027. Saudi Arabia has invested heavily in sports like soccer, Formula One and golf in the last few years. Liverpool is all set to face Sheffield United in Premier League clash tonight. Jurgen Klopp's side is currently on the second spot in the Premier League's points table as Arsenal took the lead. The pressure is firmly on Liverpool to win in order to return to the top of the Premier League table. They can go 2 points clear of league leaders Arsenal with a victory, while this game is also a chance to pad their goal difference. While Liverpool are huge favourites against Sheffield United, Klopp dismissed the notion he might rest players to focus on Sunday's clash against Manchester United. And now let's take you to South Korea's Everland theme park, where a huge crowd of tearful spectators gathered to say goodbye to Fubao, a giant panda born in South Korea, before she headed off to China on Wednesday. Roughly 5.5 million people have visited the park to see Fubao since 2020. And with that, it's all we have for you in this edition of DD India News Hour. But let us know your thoughts on the news of the day. You can connect with us on Facebook, on X, formerly known as Twitter, and on Instagram as well. We will be back with more news as it breaks here on DD India. I'm Sakal Bhatt from all of us here in New Delhi team. Thanks for watching DD India News Hour.